Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings Benny's Bats edition for Tuesday. What do we got? May 17th today. It's a big slate. We got 14 games to talk about, so let's get right into it. What we do here in the Benny's Bats section is every day we try to look at each pitcher that's on the mound, figure out what their weaknesses are, and then figure out which bats profile to do the best against them. So let's start right at the top today here. We got the Atlanta going up against Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh. Aaron Blair, the stud rookie, is pitching for Atlanta. Left-handed bats have been the ones that have been, doing work against him in the limited innings that he's been up in the majors. The only real left-handed bat on Pittsburgh is Gregory Polanco. He's the only one that I'd really look at. Had a good game yesterday, and something that I think we need to take note of whenever teams are playing Atlanta. Atlanta's catchers are not very good at throwing out runners. I know Polanco was like 3 for 3 with 3 runs scored and a stolen base or 2 yesterday. Teams are going to be stealing against Atlanta all season long. So if you have a guy that has some speed, he definitely gets a bump up when he goes up against Atlanta. Whether it's Przinski or I think Tyler Flowers is their other catcher. Neither one of these guys is all that great at throwing runners out. So I do think there's going to be a lot of stolen bases against Atlanta this year, and definitely something you want to look at. Right-handed bats haven't been bad against Blair either in his limited innings. So, Kutch and Jung Ho Kang are the two guys who actually have the best numbers, even in righty-on-righty matchups. You could also look at Sterling Marte, another guy who makes a little bit of sense there. So I think there are a couple guys in this Pittsburgh team you can look at. But on a 14-game slate, I also think we have some better spots. On the other side of this game, we got Juan Nicasio pitching. Left-handed bats have a higher average against them. He's actually been pretty tough on right-handers. This is one of the worst statistical offenses I have ever seen in my time playing, fantasy baseball and following the stats of baseball since I was a kid. This Braves team is horrible against righties. They're horrible against lefties. They have one of the lowest WRC pluses. They're like 20, 30 points below other teams in that at a minimum. They're like a third of what some of the good teams are in some of these stats. So, this is legitimately a horrendous offense. Outside of Freddie Freeman, 370 WOBA guy, a little below 200 ISO against right-handed pitching, there's not a single bat on this team that I really want to look at. So, I hate to say it, I'm not normally a huge Juan Nicasio fan, but I think he might be in a pretty good spot today. And, other than Freeman, I'm not taking any bats on Atlanta. Next game, we talk about Miami against Philadelphia. Wei-Yin Chen, the lefty, going on the mound for Miami. Right-handed bats hit about 270 against him this year and last year, and they have a home run about 1 every 6 innings, which is a pretty good clip. 30 home runs allowed in 179 innings against right-handed batters. You look at that Philly team, whichever one of the catchers is in there, whether it's Ruiz or Rupp, both of those guys are pretty decent against left-handed pitching. Mikael Franco, probably my favorite bat, 363 WOBA, 275 ISO since his call up to the majors last year against left-handed pitching. So he's somebody that's a play. And then if you're looking for a cheap punt special, either at first base or the catcher position, Darren Ruff was sent down to AAA. And the reason they sent him down is to move up Tommy Joseph, who's a hitting prospect that they have that plays first base and catcher for the Phillies. I think Joseph is somebody you may want to take a look at. He's 2K. He's been hitting, the lower middle end of that order, the 5 or 6 hole recently. And again, he's another right-handed bat that hits left-handed pitching well. They're expecting him to, be somebody who's going to be a big part of the team in the future, with Ryan Howard probably on his way out after this year because of his age and his, declining production. I think this is why they're trying to bring up Tommy Joseph. So 2K, Tommy Joseph, pretty cheap, might be a viable punt option if you need one, if you're trying to fit in, Kershaw and another decent-sized pitcher. On the other side of this game, Vincent Velasquez is pitching again. This guy's been really good. Left-handed bats have been a little bit better than him, but both righties and lefties are barely hitting over 200 against them. He has a whip right around 1 to both sides of the plate. Pretty decent strikeout stuff. I don't think he's the 16 strikeout guy that he was in that San Diego game, but just the fact that he does have that upside is more than a lot of the other guys we're going to see here. There are a couple left-handed bats on Miami that I think we got to be a little bit fearful of. Derek Dietrich leading off at the top of the order, 380 WOBA, 380 WOBA, 230 ISO score. Definitely in play. You got a 370 WOBA from a guy like Christian Yelich hitting in a 3-hole. He's hitting over 300 this year, just been really solid. Not a ton of power, but he can jack a home run out every now and then. He is a very solid hitter, does get a lot of hits. We'll take a walk, we'll get on base. He can drive in some runs, he can score some runs, a lot of ways that he can fill up a stat sheet for you. And then Justin Bour, the other lefty. Bour does have some power. It's a good hitter's ballpark for left-handed bats in Philly. So I think all those guys are in play. And then you always got to look at some of these righty bats who've been doing some damage too. Giancarlo Stanton is a monster. Martin Prado hitting out of the 2-hole, just a very solid average hitter. Marcell Ozuna's got some power hitting out of the 6th spot for them as well. We didn't even talk about JT Realmuto, the catcher. He's been pretty solid. I usually like him more against left-handed pitching, but there's a lot of bats on this Miami team that aren't bad. I do like the spot for them. I don't like the matchup though. I mean, Velasquez is a pretty good pitcher. He hasn't been somebody who's gotten knocked around. So while I do like a couple of these guys, I think it's, you kind of pick and choose with maybe some of the lefties. I don't think you want to stack up against Velasquez. I don't think that's going to wind up being a smart move. Next game, we got Seattle against Baltimore. Wade Miley on the mound for Seattle. Right-handed bats have been the way to get at him. He's a left-handed pitcher. 280 batting average, 130 whip to right-handed bats. So far in 2016, he's also already given up 7 homers to right-handed bats in only 33 innings. So I want some of these righties with power on this Baltimore team. Really like Mark Trumbo, 365 WOBA, 274 ISO, right-handed bat with power, pretty much his definition. Adam Jones has killed left-handed pitching his entire career, and he's starting to round back into form. It took him a little while after missing parts of last season, had a slow start to the beginning of this season, but he's starting to hit again. So if Adam Jones is going to be hitting, he's definitely somebody I think we need to take a look at. And I do think that you can stack this game up. I do think that Miley's somebody that, in Baltimore could give up a bunch of runs. So you can look at guys like Joey Ricard on the top of that order. You can look at Manny Machado. You can look at Chris Davis. I think all those guys are in good spots. Even Davis, who he's actually been decent over his career in lefty-on-lefty situations, although he hasn't hit lefties really well this year. Again, if you're putting together a stack, I don't think you can skip over him. I think you need him in there, especially if they chase Miley and he winds up getting 2 at-bats against the right-hander late in the game. On the other side of this game, we got Ubaldo Jimenez. He's a tough guy for me to figure out. I mean, you look back at his stats, there are games that he looks lights out. There are other games where it looks like, why is this guy still in the major leagues? There are some seasons where right-handed bats hit 280 against him and lefties hit 230. And then there are some seasons where lefties hit 280 and righties hit 230. So, there's really not a ton that you can hang your hat on. I mean, Ubaldo Jimenez is literally the definition of a guy who's kind of Jekyll and Hyde. He's been better at home, so maybe you're looking for Dr. Hyde right here or whatever. I really just don't know. Looking at some of the guys who I want to target though, Robinson Cano, 369 WOBA, 207 against right-handed pitching, 6 of 11 lifetime with 2 doubles and 2 home runs against Ubaldo Jimenez. So I think he's going to be in a good spot. Other than that, I mean, I probably want to look at the lefty bats, guys like Adam Lind or Seth Smith or Seager. But, I mean, none of them are really jumping off the page at me. So, really, outside of Cano, there's not many bats that I would be looking to take against Jimenez, although I do think they can get some runs against them. Next game, we got Tampa Bay at Toronto. Marcus Stroman is pitching. He pitched against this team, a couple weeks ago, probably about 2 weeks ago. Went 8 innings with 3 hits, 1 run, 2 base on balls, and 9 strikeouts, which is a really, really good start for him. He had less than a 200 batting average allowed to both right and left-handed bats last year. I mean, Stroman is a very good pitcher. I don't think he's somebody that's going to get lit up. They did, Tampa Bay did put up a bunch of runs yesterday, but remember, they did most of that damage against a lefty. They have a very right-handed dominant team that hits left-handed pitching well. Stroman is a righty, so I don't think this is going to be the softest spot for them. The only left-handed bat they have that stands out is Corey Dickerson. 387 WOBA, 307 ISO score against right-handed pitching. Again, those numbers a little inflated with him playing last year in Coors Field, but he does have some power. Toronto's a good hitter's ballpark. He would be the one guy that I would actually look at against Stroman, but I think I'd rather have more Stroman than I want to have Tampa Bay bats. On the other side of this game, we got Chris Archer. Right-handed bats have actually have higher average and more home runs off of him over the course of the last 3 seasons. So we got a pretty good track record of it. Guys like Batista, Edwin Encarnacion, Donaldson, they're all 380 WOBA, 250 ISO guys, even in righty-on-righty situations. And then you can look at the 2 lefties who have actually been playing and hitting well. He's been sitting around the 5 spot in that order. Excuse me. And then Michael Saunders, who's been leading off, been hitting in a 5 or 6 spot. They're kind of been bouncing him around. He's probably the best left-handed bat they have to go and attack a right-hander like Archer. One of those guys like Ubaldo. if his stuff is on, he could go out there and go 7 innings with 12 strikeouts and only give up 3 hits. If he's not on, he could walk 4 or 5 guys, get, pulled from the game before the end of the 5th inning and, give you a negative score. So really tough guy to figure. But again, he's one of those guys that you either want to use him or you want to stack against him because he's usually either really, really good or really, really bad. Next game is kind of a gas can game. We got Minnesota against Detroit. Phil Hughes against Mike Pelfrey. Now, Hughes has a high batting average to both right and left-handed bats and a huge home run rate. So really doesn't matter. Righties or lefties both kind of hit him pretty well, and everybody's kind of jacking home runs out against him. So I think you can basically use anybody that you want. Detroit has a lot of those big-time right-handed bats. Miguel Cabrera is actually 18 of 41 lifetime against Phil Hughes with 6 home runs. So for those of you who like BVP, those are some pretty good numbers. I also really like a guy like Nick Castellanos, who has also hit Hughes well, 5 of 14 lifetime with 2 doubles. And like we said, he's been absolutely on fire. I want the guys that have home run upside on Detroit. So J.D. Martinez, you can look at Justin Upton. Ian Kinsler has not hit him all that well, so he would probably be one of the guys that I shade away from. But all the other guys that we mentioned, I think, do have a little bit of upside against a fly ball pitcher like Hughes. On the other side of the game, we got Mike Pelfrey. Now, Pelfrey has a very high batting average allowed to both left and right-handed bats, but he doesn't give up a ton of home runs usually, which is kind of the drawback. The 2 guys on Minnesota I think we can look at, though, Byung-Ho Park, we talk about it. This guy is so low-owned all the time. 395 WOBA, 340 ISO, obviously limited at-bats. I think he only has about 100 of them at the major league level, but he's made the most of the at-bats that he has. He's made a believer out of me. Put him in the cleanup spot right now, so he's hitting in a good spot in the order, chance to drive in a lot of runs, and his price is still pretty cheap on a lot of sites, so I do like Park. Sano hit a home run yesterday. He, in my opinion, has had a rough start to the year. I was expecting a lot more out of him. The power numbers are starting to get there. I think he's up to 6 or 7 home runs after the one he hit yesterday. 366 WOBA, 230 ISO. He's actually 2 for 2 against Pelfrey in his lifetime with a double as well. So, again, somebody who has good stats and has been backed up by his, limited opportunity. The one other guy I want to mention, Eduardo Nunez, has been pushed up in the order. I think they had him batting second in the last couple days. 367 WOBA, 137 ISO against weak right-handed pitching. Definitely think he's somebody else we can look at. Could be getting on base in front of those guys like, like the Park and like the Sano, and he could give you a nice score at the shortstop position. I think he's shortstop and third base eligible, so he can give you a nice score for a pretty cheap price. Next game we're going to talk about, pitchers duel, Washington at the New York Mets. We got Max Scherzer going up against Noah Syndergaard. Now, I know everybody's going to run out there and put Scherzer in there because he had 20 strikeouts in his last game. But remember, Scherzer's lights out the right-handed bats. That last game, he faced a lineup that had nothing but right-handed bats. I'm not saying that he's going to get lit up today. I'm just saying don't expect him to repeat a 20 strikeout performance. This Mets team is filled with left-handed bats and some left-handed bats that are, pretty good and actually have a decent track record against Scherzer lifetime. They're in the same division, so they've seen each other quite a few times before. Michael Conforto, probably my favorite, 388 WOBA, 266 ISO. They still got him hitting out of the 3-hole. He's still the cheapest of these 3 on a bunch of sites, which is, astounding to me, but that's the way it is. So I think Conforto definitely somebody in play. Yoenis Cespedes, 385 WOBA, 277 ISO. Righty on righty, Scherzer's kind of tough, though. So like I said, even though the numbers stand out for Cespedes against right-handed pitching, the numbers also stand out for Scherzer against right-handed batters. Cespedes is 3 for 9 lifetime with the home run against him, though. So, take that for what it's worth. Small sample size, grain of salt. He would probably be the one outfielder. I don't know how much exposure I really want. And then the last guy, Granderson, 370 WOBA, 218 ISO score, 7 of 23 lifetime against Scherzer with a home run as well. So, the lefties have actually done the most damage against him. I think that's the way I would try to lean. But, again, it is Max Scherzer. I'm not expecting the Mets to put up a ton of runs here. You can kind of say the same thing on the other side of this game. We got Noah Syndergaard pitching for the Mets. Left-handed bats have been a tad better against them. So Harper, 468 WOBA, 352 ISO. We talk about how good this guy is against right-handed pitching. Daniel Murphy, 366 WOBA, 203 ISO. These are the 2 guys that you would want some exposure to. But again, with a 14-game slate, I don't know how many pitchers. I don't know how many hitters I want to take against Scherzer. I don't know if I really want to be targeting hitters against Noah Syndergaard either. I don't really think either one of those things are a smart play. So there are much better spots we can look at. Next game, Chicago Cubs at the Milwaukee Brewers. Kyle Hendricks pitching for the Cubs, and I actually really like him here. Left-handed bats are usually the ones that have a higher average and more home runs against them. Again, the Brewers, not a lot of left-handed bats. You're basically looking at Scooter Gennett, maybe Alex Presley, and that's about it. That's about all they have. And neither one of those guys are going to be guys that are going to scare me away from them at this point. Let's see. Hendricks has really good numbers in his limited innings versus the Brewers. So I do think that this is probably a spot where he's going to put up a big game. I mean, the Brewers have struggled against right-handed pitching, giving up a lot of strikeouts lately. The one guy I am looking at, Ryan Braun, 365 WOBA, 203 ISO. He's only 1 for 8 lifetime against Hendricks, but he does profile as somebody who could give him trouble, especially in Milwaukee. Very good hitter's ballpark. Home runs tend to fly out of there. But like I said, I think I like Hendricks more than I like anybody else in this one. Let's see. Chase Anderson on the other side here. Chase Anderson's been a reverse splits guy for the last 3 years. Right-handed bats, higher average and more home runs, but left-handed bats have been all right against him too. So against this Cubs team, I just think they're going to demolish this guy. I mean, you got guys like Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant. I think both of them are in very good spots. Rizzo, 399, 278 ISO, 375 WOBA, 206 ISO for Bryant. Tommy La Stella, if he gets in there, 374 WOBA, 207 ISO. Actually, the third highest WOBA on the team against right-handed pitching for La Stella, the lefty. You got guys like Fowler, Zobrist, Hayward, Baez has been playing lately, Addison Russell. I mean, there's just so many good bats on this team. I expect the Cubs to light them up. Good hitter's ballpark for them there in Milwaukee. It's actually a park bump for them. So, whatever Cubs you can fit into your roster, you're not gonna have too many of them, and you're not gonna get any arguments about it from me. Next game we can talk about, Houston at the Chicago White Sox. We got Carlos Rodon pitching for the White Sox. This is a tough spot for him. Right-handed bats have a higher average and more home runs. The bottom part of that order does strike out a lot. So if he racked up a bunch of strikeouts, I wouldn't be surprised. But you got Altuve, 434 WOBA, 193 ISO, 2 of 6 lifetime against Rodon. 400 WOBA last year, 400 batting average against left-handed pitching the year before. This guy always hits lefties well, and he's on fire right now. He's like 3rd or 4th in the league with like 8 or 9 home runs for a guy who's like 5'6" and 160 pounds. Let's see. The next guy, we got George Springer, 415 WOBA, 248 ISO. He obviously loves hitting left-handed pitching too. Carlos Correa, 367 WOBA, 245 ISO. So he has had the power stroke working more against the left-handed pitching as well. But then you can even look at a guy like Marwin Gonzalez, who I think is kind of cheap. 374 WOBA, 212 ISO. He has been hitting 5th or 6th in that order lately. If he's going to be hitting in the middle of that order against a left-handed pitcher, I definitely think I want to have some exposure to him as well. If you're making a stack and you're not using, Gonzalez with the 3 guys above him and whoever else you can fit in there, I kind of think you're doing it wrong today. On the other side of this game, this guy is maddening to me, Dallas Keuchel. Last year he was lights out. This year, right-handed bats are hitting over 300 against him, and even left-handed bats are hitting him hard. There's 2 or 3 guys that I would look at on this White Sox team against them. Really like Todd Frazier, 376 WOBA, 339 ISO. Definitely think he's somebody in play. He hits left-handed pitching really well. He does have some power, and Keuchel has struggled this year. Jimmy Rollins, 378, 164, not a horrible option. And then Jose Abreu, who's actually 2 of 6 lifetime already against Keuchel with a home run. I think he's somebody else that we can look at as well. Next game we'll talk about, we got Boston going up against KC. And the analysis for this is the same as it was for yesterday. We got Porcello against Ventura again. As we said, Porcello's been great this year. About a 200 batting average, about a whip right around 1 to both right and left-handed bats. If I'm going to attack him, I'm probably going to go more lefty-heavy. Eric Hosmer, 9 of 27 lifetime with 2 home runs against Porcello. He's probably my favorite bat to look at. You got guys like Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon. You got guys like Gordon. You got guys like Morales, both 350 WOBAs and 170 ISO scores. So they're both in play. And then even Lorenzo Cain. Lorenzo Cain's actually 5 of 13 lifetime against Porcello. And Porcello's the kind of guy who, before this season at least, was pretty even to both right and left-handed bats. So it's not like I want all lefties against them, although I do think the lefties are in a better spot. The other side of this game, you got Yordano Ventura. Ventura's lost the strike zone lately, so he's been walking a lot of batters, and he's been giving up a couple home runs, which is a horrible combination, because if you start walking a couple guys and then you make a mistake and you give up a home run ball, now you're down 3 or 4-0. Plus, you've thrown a ton of pitches because the walks tend to raise a pitch count faster than anything else can. I think the entire Red Sox team is going to be in play. You can start with Mookie Betts up top, 2 for 6 lifetime against Ventura. Pedroia, 350 WOBA, 144 ISO. Ortiz, 415 WOBA, 294 ISO. You can look at Hanley. You can look at Xander. You can look at Shaw, Jackie Bradley Jr. I mean, basically with the Red Sox here, I think the question you want to ask yourself is not do I want Red Sox, but which Red Sox guys do I want? And I think there's a case to be made for 5 or 6 of them. Remember, this offense is putting up like 10 runs a game over the course of the last week, and that's not an exaggeration. I think it's actually undershooting what they've actually done. They had like 11, 13, 14, 10, 9. I mean, when 9 is your bad game, you know that offense is humming along. So not having any exposure to the Red Sox, I think, is, kind of playing with fire. Next game, we're going to talk about Colorado against St. Louis. We got Jaime Garcia, 2016. He's given up about a 170 batting average to both left and right-handed bats. This guy has been lights out. Very, very good. You look at the other side, guys going up against them. I guess Nolan Arenado makes a lot of sense. Right-handed bat, 357 WOBA, 250 ISO, 2 for 4 lifetime against Garcia with a double. The other 2 right-handed bats you can look at, Ryan Rayburn will probably be in there. The problem with Rayburn, remember, is as soon as they take out the lefty and put in the righty, he's going to get pinch hit for. They're going to put in, Mark Reynolds or whoever else that they decide to sit to start this game. And then you also have a guy like Trevor Story, 477 WOBA, 400 ISO score to start the year against left-handed pitching. I mean, he's just been absolutely crushing the ball. If he doesn't strike out, he usually winds up having a big game. He actually usually winds up having a big game even with 1 or 2 strikeouts because he does have high strikeout numbers, but I think he's somebody else you can look at. Although I got to be honest, I'm not really looking to pick on Garcia today. There are much worse pitchers on the mound, much better spots for hitters, and this game is not in Coors Field. It's in St. Louis, so they're definitely getting a big park downgrade there. On the other side of this game, we got Chad Bettis that's pitching, and he's been kind of a reverse splits guy too. The last 3 years, right-handed bats actually have a higher average against them. So guys like Stephen Piscotty, Gearchuk, Holiday, whichever ones of those guys are in there, they're all 360-plus WOBA guys in righty-on-righty matchups. I think all 3 of them are in decent spots. And then, of course, you can look at Matt Carpenter, 394 WOBA, 257 ISO, against right-handed pitching. A guy like Jeremy Hasselbaker, if he gets in there, he's been hitting right-handed pitching pretty well, another left-handed bat. So those are some of the guys on St. Louis. I do like the St. Louis bats. I think they could be okay. But remember, this game's not in Coors. It is in St. Louis. So, you're not looking for the huge upside that you normally would have if it was in Coors. We got the Yankees going up against Arizona. This one's really tough for me. I mean, you got Zach Greinke on the mound. And let's face it, I mean, for lack of a better way to explain it, he sucked at home. At Arizona, he has just been getting lit up in all of his starts there. I think Greinke in this game, it's kind of an all or nothing thing. Either you think Greinke's going to pitch well and you use him in your teams and your tournaments, your cash games, or you think Greinke's going to get lit up again at home, in which case you stack up all the Yankees. Now, I'm not looking to pick out individual Yankees and put them into rosters, use them as one-offs or anything like that. For me, it's one or the other. You're either taking Greinke, you're taking the Yankees, or you're passing on this game altogether. I don't think it's a game where you're going to go, I think Gardner's in a good spot but not Ellsbury, or Ellsbury's in a good spot but not Gardner, or I'm going to take Tex. I mean, if you're going to take anybody, McCann's going to be highly owned, left-handed catcher going against a right-handed pitcher. I don't really think this is a stud spot for him, but that he's always highly owned. You got Carlos Beltran, who had been hitting well, just hit his 400th home run, is feeling good about himself. Again, not really guys that I'm rushing to put in my roster. I'm either stacking the Yankees or I'm taking Greinke. There's kind of no middle ground for me on this. On the other side of the game, we got Michael Pineda pitching. Right and left-handed bats have been hitting him hard. He's been very bad against left-handers recently. The one guy who I really always like is Goldie. I know it's righty on righty, but 399 WOBA, 242 ISO score. Hits third in the order, hit a home run yesterday against the right-hander. I mean, this guy's just an absolute stud. The biggest left-handed bat they have right now has been their cleanup hitter, Jake Lamb. Lamb is somebody who hit another home run yesterday, does have some upside. It's still very, very cheap on a lot of these sites, but he's also somebody who can throw up the 0 for 3 or 0 for 4 game, which he's done before. But I do think he's somebody else that we got to take a look at. And then I'm not really a huge fan of Pineda, the way he's pitched this year. So if you want to stack it up, you can look at guys like Segura. They had Michael Bourne in the 2-hole yesterday, kind of dropped Drury down to the 6th spot. Wellington Castillo should probably be back in the lineup again. So, these are some of the other guys that you can look at if you want to round it out. Like I said, Pineda's been getting lit up, so it's not the craziest idea. Next game we can talk about, Texas at Oakland. We got Eric Surkamp, the lefty, pitching for Oakland, and he's somebody I expect to get lit up. Right-handed bats do better against them, but left-handed bats aren't bad either. Beltre and Desmond, definitely two guys I think you should have up top. Desmond has been hitting really well lately. Beltre, always solid, 394 WOBA, 228 ISO score. I think both of them make play. Both of them are in play. But like I said, I also think if you're stacking, the left-handed bats haven't been horrible against Surkamp either. So, that gives you guys like Nomar Mazara and Prince Fielder, maybe Rognan Odor, depending on if he gets, suspended or if his hand's broken from that right cross he threw the other day. Other than that, like I said, I don't think Surkamp's very good. I do expect him to give up a bunch of runs. You're basically not going to get any arguments with any Texas bats you got in your lineup from me. On the other side of this game, Cole Hamels pitching. Cole Hamels usually tough against left-handed bats. You probably want to go with the righties against him. The only guy that's really standing out for me is Danny Valencia. 383 WOBA, 208 ISO score. Let's face it. I mean, this guy has been very, very good the last week or so. I think he has 5 home runs in his last 4 games, hit 3 home runs in 1 game the other night. And his price is still pretty cheap. He's in the 3,400 range. He's either hitting 3rd or 4th in the order. A lot to like about Valencia. It's a tough matchup, but Hamels is not the lights out guy he was 2 or 3 years ago. He's still very good. I'm not saying that he's, easily hittable, but I just don't think he has the same kind of lights out upside that he used to. Next game, we got the Los Angeles Angels against the LA Dodgers. We got Clayton Kershaw on the mound for the Dodgers, so this analysis will be really easy. Trout's the only decent bat they have. If you want to take him, go ahead. I'm not taking him or anybody else against Kershaw. No bats here. Kershaw, definitely somebody who I'm looking at. Facing a very bad team, I don't care that they don't strike out a lot. It's Clayton Kershaw. He will get his strikeouts as well. Kershaw is going to have a big game. I'm not taking any of the Angels' bats because they're not going to. The other side of this game, we got Jared Weaver. Left and right-handed bats have pretty much equal batting averages against them. He does have a high home run rate this year. So if you're looking at some guys to take, Corey Seager's been hot. He's starting to hit the ball. Adrian Gonzalez actually left the game with an injury yesterday. So I'm kind of interested to see how that winds up playing itself out. I figure you're probably going to get Justin Turner, righty on righty matchup, 358 WOBA, 179, somewhere in the middle of the order. Maybe they move up Yasiel Puig. I'm not really sure how exactly they're going to handle this, but just keep it in mind. If you were somebody planning on playing Adrian Gonzalez, he did leave the game in the 4th inning yesterday. I think they said it was a stiff back. So again, I don't have any more details on it. I'm not a doctor, but make sure you monitor the situation, because if he's out, it could mean some shuffling in the lineup. Maybe you get some guys that you like. Maybe Grandal is hitting cleanup or something like that, and then he becomes a solid play that we have to consider. The last game on the day, San Francisco going up against San Diego. Madison Bumgarner pitching for San Francisco. He pitched the last week of April against the San Diego team. 6.2 innings, 6 hits, 2 base on balls, 2 runs, 9 strikeouts, 28 fantasy points. So wasn't a dominant performance, but he was very, very good. And, definitely something that you take. I guess you can look at guys like Kemp and Myers if you want, right-handed bats going up against a left-handed pitcher, but this is a bad offense that has bad numbers against Bumgarner, so I don't really think you need to force anything with them. On the other side of this game, we got Colin Rea. Right-handed bats have actually hit him harder, about a 280 batting average in the last year and a half. Guys like Denard Span, 373, 134. Brandon Belt, 368, 193. Joe Panic, 360, 178. Even Hunter Pence and Buster Posey, 376, 201, 352, 144. The thing about the San Francisco team is it's not 1 or 2 bats that you can pinpoint as I got to have this guy or I got to have that guy. It's them as a collective whole, which is why I actually usually wind up either stacking them or not taking many bats from their lineup at all. But this is a team where everybody top to bottom could hit. I think they could wind up getting 4 or 5 runs, if not more, against Rea here. But like I said, if you're looking to fill out a fantasy team, other than stacking up all the San Francisco bats, I don't really see myself picking out 1 or 2 of these guys and throwing them in there with, other guys. If one of them fits, sure. Posey, catcher-wise, obviously somebody that I'll consider. Not my favorite catcher on the day, not the guy that I'm rushing to pay up for, but obviously always somebody you can look at there. But like I said, this is either an all or nothing kind of team for me. I usually either stack up San Francisco, which I think they could have a good game against Raya today, or I just stay away from them completely. So that wraps it up. 14 games. I'm actually running out of breath right now after going through all those for you. Thank you guys for joining us here at rotocurve.com. And as always, stay classy, DFS.